Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So today I want to talk about Blackbeard versus Luffy. But before I really get into it, let's first talk about Blackbeard and just how strong he is, because I cannot emphasize it enough. This dude is physically strong. He nearly broke Ace's neck just with a physical blow alone. He's also got incredible endurance. The man can take a beating unlike any other character in the story outside of perhaps Luffy. And then also we're talking about the strongest Devil Fruit user currently alive, and there's potential that he could only get better in that department as well. So Blackbeard is a beast. But at some point Luffy's got to defeat him, right? And so how exactly is he going to do that? And it's way too early to really delve into that topic and be accurate when talking about it, because there's so much that we need to know between now and the time in the story that we get to Blackbeard, which is guaranteed to be in-game or near in-game at the very least. And so I'm not going to try and answer this decisively, but I am going to bring up at least one important point that I think everyone should know and consider. This is not something that many people talk about, but I do think is highly important. If you're thinking about speculating how the fight versus Blackbeard will go down, I think this is the most interesting evidence out there that exists right now. And so without further ado, let's just get right into it. So there's a lot of things that I could potentially say in regards to the fight of Luffy versus Blackbeard, but I can talk forever, you guys know that, so I'm just going to avoid most of this conversation and leave that up to you guys in the comment section. What I want to focus on is the Yami Yami no Mi, and specifically its ability to quote-unquote suck in the devil's power. And so essentially what this does is it negates a Devil Fruit user's ability whenever Blackbeard actually touches them. But other things negate the abilities of the Devil Fruit user. What the Yami Yami no Mi seems to do is something completely different from everything else in the world of One Piece. Haki allows somebody to come into contact with a Devil Fruit user's body even if their body has no physical form. So that is useful, but not what the Yami Yami no Mi does. The same can be said about Sea Stone. Sea Stone negates the Devil Fruit user's powers in a way, but it doesn't actually take away their powers, it just takes away their energy, because we can see that when Luffy goes into the sea, he still has the ability to stretch, which means that his body is still rubber. He just can't activate his powers because he has no energy. The Yami Yami no Mi actually sucks in the devil's power, which I assume essentially means that when he touches a Devil Fruit user, they're no longer a Devil Fruit user. They lose their Devil Fruit ability. So when Blackbeard touches Luffy, Luffy is no longer a rubber man. He's just a normal human. And so if this is true, this is game changing. But let's just go back to Blackbeard's ability to negate the Devil Fruit. First of all, that poses a problem by itself, because we'll see that Luffy is gaining strength. He's gaining notoriety in the world. People are starting to recognize him. But in order to contend with the top tiers in the world, you'll notice that one thing above anything else allows him to do this. And while he's increasing his haki, while he's getting physically stronger and physically faster, we can assume the main thing that he has that allows him to compete is his Devil Fruit ability and how he chooses to use it. But given that Blackbeard actually has to physically touch Luffy in order to take away his Devil Fruit ability, this doesn't seem like a huge problem at first glance. Basically, Blackbeard would touch Luffy, do some damage to Luffy, but Luffy would bounce back, because as soon as Blackbeard stops touching him, he goes back to being a rubber man and being the force that we currently know that he is, with forms such as Gear 4th. But I actually think it's a far bigger problem than that when looking at how Luffy uses his powers and how Blackbeard's powers seem to work. If you stop and think about each of Luffy's gears, Gear 2nd, Gear 3rd, and Gear 4th, they are all highly unnatural, and they are only possible because Luffy's body is made out of rubber. Gear 2nd is essentially increasing his blood flow to a capacity that normal humans wouldn't be able to take, that would kill them, that he can withstand because everything in his body is made out of rubber, and rubber is elastic and can take that sort of force. The same applies to Gear 3rd and Gear 4th. He's basically blowing air into his bones and into his muscles. But let's go back to what I said previously about Blackbeard and how his powers work. It seems as though he takes away somebody's Devil Fruit abilities. So when Blackbeard touches Luffy, Luffy is no longer a rubber man. How would that play a role when Luffy is actually using some of his gear forms. Imagine Luffy using Gear 4th. He's blown air into his muscles, which I've speculated previously he's only able to keep there based on using his haki. And so imagine Blackbeard touching him, taking away his rubber body while he has air in his muscles. That could seriously harm Luffy to the point that it could potentially even kill him. Every fiber of his muscles is blown up with that air, and as soon as he becomes a normal human, the muscle fibers are no longer rubber, and every single muscle in his body will break. At least that's how it should work logically if Blackbeard does indeed take away someone's Devil Fruit abilities when he touches them. So essentially that's a one-hit KO. Blackbeard would automatically win against Luffy if Luffy tries to use Gear 4th against him. Or at least, guys, that's what makes sense to me. Now, just to preempt some comments, Luffy has actually used Gear 2nd before and been touched by Blackbeard, and if I'm right, lost his Devil Fruit abilities, and that did not kill Luffy. But in the case of speeding up your blood, I can only imagine that that did a lot of damage to Luffy, but just didn't automatically kill him, given Blackbeard only touched him once. But I think that if he used it repeatedly against Blackbeard, it would prove to be not an effective way of fighting Blackbeard and ultimately lead to Luffy's defeat. So let's go back to the original question, Blackbeard versus Luffy. How is Luffy going to beat Blackbeard? Well, honestly, guys, I don't think that it will be any use of Gear 2nd, Gear 3rd, or Gear 4th. And so this makes some sense, right? We should expect Gear 5th is coming, so he's definitely not going to use Gear 2nd, Gear 3rd, or Gear 4th. But potentially Gear 5th offers up an alternative which is effective against fighting against Blackbeard. That's definitely possible since we don't know how or what Gear 5th is yet. But I don't really want to speculate on Gear 5th because that seems like the obvious answer. What instead I want to bring up is another idea that I heard recently from Brago D Ace, which is that is Luffy's base form, the form in which he isn't altering his body in some way with his Devil Fruit ability, some unnatural way, doesn't he need to make it stronger? Every single gear form has a drawback, whether it's limiting his life, shortening his lifespan, or just, in the case of Gear 4th, making it so that he can't use haki after Gear 4th ends. There's a bunch of downsides to using his current techniques, and it would be so much simpler if he could just, like his grandfather, he has the bloodline for it, just improve his base physical strength and master haki to compete with the top tiers. Garp didn't need a rubber body in order to be one of the strongest people in the world. It's also speculated that Shanks and Goldie Roger as well did not have Devil Fruits, and instead currently are the strongest just based on haki and physical strength. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility for Luffy to get there eventually. But does he have enough time? That is the real question, and honestly I'm doubtful from that perspective, unless there's some sort of time skip, which I actually personally don't believe is going to happen, or at least a prolonged time skip. Then it doesn't seem likely for Luffy to make great strides with just his own personal strength and really be able to compete. But I definitely do see Luffy having grade A+ haki by the time the end game arrives, so perhaps that alone is going to be enough to allow Luffy to get to that level. But we gotta keep in mind this is One Piece and Oda is a genius, and from that perspective a lot of different things are possible, even if it doesn't seem possible right now. So I really just want to throw that thought out there for you guys just to really think about and mull over. But yeah, guys, I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share the idea that Luffy can't use any of his current gear forms against Blackbeard for the reasons that I mentioned in this video, and I want to hear what you guys think about it, and tell me if you agree or if you disagree, and why. I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and also that if you'd subscribe if you like the kind of material that I'm bringing to YouTube. And as always, dudes, have a wonderful day.